Recently, a mysterious game called Last Days has become very popular on the internet. Many game lovers have immersed themselves in it. But what is surprising is that the developer of the game is still unknown, as if he appeared out of thin air. Hao Han is an ordinary guy. He doesn't care much about all this hype. He prefers to drink beer and enjoy solitude. The guy had long ago decided that all these games were not for him. Having finished another can of beer, Hao Han got up and headed to his bed. Experts remind that it is not good to get carried away with games, especially games of unknown origin. In order not to fall into the trap of scammers, it is better not to download them from unknown sources. Meanwhile, Hao Han was already lying on the bed waiting for another hangover. Suddenly hearing someone's voice, Hao Han slowly opened his eyes. He saw a beautiful girl with blue hair in front of him. In surprise, Hao Han tried to stand up, but accidentally hit his hands where he shouldn't have. Realizing that this was not a dream but reality, Hao Han immediately threw the girl away from you and asked what happened. The girl moved closer and introduced herself. She said that her name was Ren Kun Chi, and she was from the Piao Miao Kai group. The girl also added that she apologized for desecrating the body of our hero without permission, because there was a good reason for this. While Hao Han was trying to figure out what was going on, a huge wolf suddenly burst into his room, but Ren immediately burned it. She stated that as long as she had business here, no one would cause harm. After that, she looked down and saw that there were a bunch of wolves who were going to avenge their brother. The girl jumped out of the window to stop them, and finally asked the gentleman to wait until she removed these mongrels, after which she would come and have some fun. Hao Han didn't understand a damn thing about what was going on in his apartment. Suddenly, his computer screen turned on. A strange face appeared there, and the unknown person said that he didn't expect that the game he created would be so cool that it would break through dimensions. Hao Han immediately picked up a stool to smash his monitor. However, laughter rang out. Hao Han heard the words that the creator of the game was talking to him in the last days, and Hao Han would soon become the one who would control everything in the real world. Hao Han stopped and asked, "Is he really talking to that mysterious developer of this game?" The developer burst into laughter and declared that he was not just a developer, he was the most powerful AI system in the past, present, and future. And the game was just a training exercise, and it had already made mortals unable to get out of a situation after using less than 1 unit of force. Hao Han still didn't understand anything and tried to figure out what was going on. Could it really be the developer's fault? The developer said that just playing on the phone is too boring and it doesn't show all his genius. So after 10,000 updates, he successfully broke through the dimension wall, and now the game and the real world are connected. And that girl and the aggressive werewolves, they are all characters in the game, and they found our hero through the wormhole. Hao Han grabbed his monitor and declared that he had never even played this game. The developer said that he accidentally found a photo of our hero on the internet, and now all the game characters consider him a savior and want to come to the rescue. The developer also explained that since the game stations are now in reality, they cannot enter the game world, and that is why the girl used a special method to obtain our hero's energy. After all, by collecting energy, it would be possible to return the flesh of our hero by giving birth to the savior and turn the situation in the game around. Hao Han asked with tears in his eyes, was this just a joke? Or would many girls really come to him to get his energy? The developer replied that it would be so. Hao Han asked when they would arrive, and the developer replied that at any moment, upon hearing this information, the guy immediately began to squat. The developer asked in an intrigued voice what the guy was doing, and Hao Han replied that he was warming up to prepare himself for the upcoming battles. Smiling, the developer said that Hao Han was thinking too much about this, because their goal is to get a monopoly over our hero's energy. After all, one descendant of the savior is quite enough, so it doesn't matter who takes it the first time, because in the end, one of two things will happen. Our hero will either be beheaded or have his head chopped off. Upon hearing this information, Hao Han immediately packed his things and announced that he was leaving. The developer asked where Hao Han went, and the guy replied that he wanted to take advantage of the confusion and get away quietly. The developer said that it was too late. Hao Han walked up to the window and saw many portals. And the developer, with a cheerful intonation, announced that the first invasion was officially declared open. From behind these portals, rays struck. People looked at this and wondered, what in the world is going on? Hao Han asked the developer identical questions. The developer replied that his game had already broken through dimensions, and along with it, various of its attributes, right down to the characters, had come into this world. Embarrassed by his own genius, the developer declared that now no one needs mobile phones because life itself is a game. Hao Han thought that this developer was just crazy, and the system had gone crazy, and he also thought that this was the end because if now the whole world would want to fuck our heroes sing, then is there any point in running away at all? By the way, with these thoughts, Hao Han looked down and saw that the girl he had recently met was lying on the floor, exhausted. Hao Han said that things were bad and she wouldn't last long, after which he looked at the developer and ordered to give her the equipment quickly. Because Hao Han was now the savior, and we couldn't allow this Paw Patrol to finish him off at the beginning. The developer smiled and said that of course he will give the best set so that Hao Han can play comfortably. And the rule is quite simple. If Hao Han pleases the developer, he will be able to get the corresponding number of points, and these points can be exchanged for a chance to draw a card, fall out of it, maybe some ability, various equipment, potions, or other more valuable requisites. Hao Han looked at the developer and asked if by the phrase please he meant give a spectacle. The developer immediately replied that this is exactly what he meant. Because take at least the moment when Ren saddled him, the developer said that it was quite impressive and Hao Han deserved 30 points. Hao Han immediately spent them on cards, and the developer said that Hao Han must use them to get a reward. Under the red card there are abilities. Under the blue one there are equipment. Under the gold one there are elixirs. Hao Han immediately spent all his balance and declared that of course he would choose the ability. As soon as Hao Han said this, the map changed, and the system congratulated our hero on receiving a low-level skill, a flaming fist with a fire attribute, attack power plus 300, and a duration of 5 minutes. Something appeared on our hero's hand, and the system explained that it was his skill bracelet, and he just needed to put the received card and it would activate. Hao Han inserted his bracelet card and said that as luck would have it, he drew a fire skill against the earth. However, he had no choice. As soon as Hao Han inserted his card, his appearance changed, and flashes of fire appeared around him. The wolves had almost finished off Zhenya, as she was now called Hao Han. The girl was thinking about apologizing to her father for the fact that she had turned out to be useless, and she had failed to complete the mission and bring the young master to the family. The girl tried to defend herself and thought that all she could do was pay back for everything in the next life. But suddenly, Hao Han appeared and punched the monster in the face. He wanted to throw it away and go down to the ground. The girl watched all this with delighted eyes. She asked him to stop because it was dangerous. However, Hao Han said that he didn't have time to play with her, after which he used his skill at full power. And then he rushed to attack the main boss. While he was delivering his blows, he received the game manual for the last days. It was written there that in case of absolute advantage in strength, the affiliation of attributes to the elements may not be taken into account. While Hao Han was reading this, he dealt with the last wolf, which immediately disappeared. Hao Han received 50 experience points and noticed that there were more regiments hiding nearby, who immediately began to run away. Hao Han clicked somewhere and saw a panel that showed his current characteristics. After that, Hao Han returned home to patch up the holes in the wall. The developer said that our hero probably liked it, after which he asked, "Is it really true that his play is not flawless?" Hao Han held the boards in his hands and said that he was repeating this for the last time. He didn't like games. After that, the girl who was lying on his bed drew attention to herself and asked if they could now get down to business. Hao Han clearly understood that as soon as she got what she wanted, he would be killed immediately. Hao Han threw down the hammer and boards and said that he was a little hungry so he would go buy something for his ears. He opened the door and said that he would be back soon. However, there was already something waiting for him there. The unknown woman immediately threw our hero aside and ordered him not to move, after which she came closer and stepped on him with her heel. Hao Han looked at her in surprise and the woman took out her ID and said that she was from the Secret Service, so that's why she hoped for his assistance. The woman added that they suspected that there was an intruder hiding in his house. Hao Han read the ID and found out that it was a Secret Service employee named Fairy. The girl was still advancing on our hero and ordered her workers to search everything here. The Secret Service employees immediately began their inspection. They literally crawled into every crack. The fairy did not calm down and said that they should search everything thoroughly, not missing a single detail. Hao Han meanwhile looked around and tried to understand where Zhenya had disappeared to. Well, he was glad that she had enough sense to run because otherwise everything would have been very difficult to explain. Hao Han approached the fairy and said that he was truly an exemplary citizen from a simple background and that he had no criminal record or bad habits. Suddenly, he noticed that a developer appeared on her radio and wanted to say something. Hao Han immediately hit the radio and ordered him to shut up. Because of this, the woman fell onto the sofa and was clearly unhappy with this event. Han realized what he had just done and immediately apologized for his mistake. The fairy, meanwhile, discovered a sex doll under his sofa and ordered that this pervert be quickly taken and delivered to the department, where she would personally deal with him. After some time, Han was already inside the car, handcuffed. All this time he was saying that he was not guilty, but no one listened to him. A few minutes into the trip, there was an explosion outside the car door. Han looked closely and saw that a cheap parody of Dr. Octopus had appeared. And in general, the whole world seemed to have gone crazy. Strange people and monsters appeared everywhere. Han looked at all this and thought that the whole world was now in chaos. The woman, meanwhile, took out her radio and asked to connect her to the main office. She announced that this is the captain of the 1st Division, Lin Fei. After which she relayed the situation. Here on the street, criminals are robbing a bank, so she just permission to stop them. But she was immediately answered that she already had the task of investigating the crime, so there was nothing to complicate. The 2nd Division had already left, and it would detain the culprits and restore the destruction. The captain said that she understood everything, after which she threw away her radio, with the words that these scum of society took advantage of the opportunity and raised a mutiny. And for that, they definitely needed to be blown to pieces with heavier weapons. After some time, they finally reached the main directorate of the Secret Service. Our hero was forced inside and ordered to sit still and not move. Han was trying to find out how long he would have to wait here. However, they didn't answer him, which made Han think that his damn system would soon drive him to his grave. Suddenly, from the surveillance camera, the developer who called our hero a dragon began to speak. After all, he had the strength to deal with the Secret Service. However, he got caught like a fool and is now sitting here. Han immediately stood up and declared that he would kill the developer, after which he added that if the developer had not used his photo, Han would not have become the object of persecution for the inhabitants of the two worlds. Meanwhile, the fairy was drinking coffee and talking about how they first caught him. And now they locked him alone in the interrogation room. And after such a busy day, probably anyone's mental barrier collapses in a matter of minutes. She sighed heavily. How is Han feeling? The man said with a surprised face that Han was making obscene gestures on the surveillance camera. The girl immediately decided that she would go herself and deal with him one-on-one. The officer thought that our hero would be in trouble. On the way, the captain of the 2nd Division appeared in front of her. He asked who had made the fairy so angry, but without waiting for an answer, he asked if she was free tonight and suggested having dinner together after work. The woman replied that she was not interested and tried to open the door. However, the man took her hand and asked her not to reject him. The man moved a little closer and said that everyone in the department knows how passionate he is about her. But she constantly refuses, which makes him look stupid. So she knows to give him at least one step. The man became a little embarrassed and said that she will never forget this night. The woman looked him straight in the eye and said that she knew perfectly well who was standing in front of her, after which she added that she would never become one of those idiots who got pregnant from him out of stupidity. After a short pause, the fairy also added that if he tried to interfere again, she would simply destroy him. After which the fairy angrily opened the doors and slammed them behind her. The man thought that this was a complete failure. The girl who passed by and said that this one was trying to suck up again. But it is obvious that he just wants to use her to establish communication with the boss and get a promotion. They also discussed the fact that he had not noticed the fairy before. But as soon as her father was transferred to the position of chief, he immediately went crazy with love. The girls giggled and said that such men are too spineless. This guy looked at them angrily and called them damn gossips. At this time, the fairy was already conducting an interrogation and asking what Han was doing this evening during the invasion, and why the first wave came to his house. Han replied that he did not understand at all what the officer was talking about. The girl slammed her hand on the table and declared that Han did not dare to pretend to be a fool. She came a little closer and declared that his house was destroyed by some external forces, which meant that something had broken into their world and first came to our hero. Meanwhile, the captain of the 2nd squad went crazy and, using his new system and abilities, killed 2 gossips. After that, he went to the evidence department where he said that the head of the department had asked to check the quantity and was going to conduct an investigation that night. They gave him the necessary materials, and then the man added that they had just recently brought in several unidentified objects that most likely should be sent to the archive. The head of the department said that this was true, and they were on the 20th shelf. After this, the captain of the 2nd detachment thanked the manager and pierced him with his hand. He went to the 20th shelf, where there were exceptional valuables that he simply could not allow to lie sadly in the dark and collect dust. The head of the Secret Service Directorate had already received news that the captain of the second detachment was killing his fellow soldiers. They reported to him that you cannot be a mistake, and they have already requested the recordings from the camera, and also added that he did not go anywhere and also the management, and now the recordings are being checked. Suddenly, another officer ran into the room and loudly announced that the captain of the second detachment had been found. 20 minutes ago, he had entered the evidence storage room and had not yet come out. The head of the Secret Service immediately stood up and declared that this freak dared to kill his fellow soldiers, and for this, it would not be enough to kill him. Therefore, he would personally carry out a special sentence. Having assembled a detachment, they went to fold public evidence. One of the officers said that they also posted patrols below, so that he would not have the opportunity to leave through the window, after which the chief declared that it was time to attack. And right away, ironically, there was a huge explosion because of the captain of the second squad. The man came out into the hallway and asked, "Why are there so many people here? Does everyone really like working overtime so much?" He immediately started shooting at the gun. However, he opened his body with a strange metal alloy in a matter of seconds. One of the officers realized that the captain of the second squad had activated the confiscated, unidentified items. The chief was calm and ordered everyone to follow the tactics of fighting metal. The officers immediately threw ice grenades, but the captain of the second responded that this was too naive. After which he activated his fire abilities and declared that he was now showing what real horror is. People immediately raised the alarm. However, despite all this, the chief rushed forward with his bare hands. The captain of the second squad swung his sword and asked if the old man even understood what he was doing now, after which they collided head-on. And to my surprise, the boss won and threw this idiot away from himself. Meanwhile, the fairy began to torture our hero and ask whether he would tell or not what happened in his apartment. Rather than this, they announced the alarm, so this is why the girl looked at the censor with a surprised face. She opened the doors to the corridor and asked the people passing by what had just happened. They shouted that the captain of the second squad had mutated. Therefore, we need to run away from here as quickly as possible. Immediately after these screams, the captain of the second squad broke through the ceiling and went down into the corridor to the ferry. He smiled and said that they finally met again. The girl immediately took out her weapon and called him a beast. Meanwhile, Hao-Han was trying to recover and thought that Fairy was just crazy. Suddenly, a fairy and the captain of the second squad, who were fighting on the move, burst into his cell. The captain of the second squad deactivated his suit and said that he was glad that now she would not be able to resist his desires. The girl screamed for help, and they were both surprised to find that Hao-Han was trying to quietly escape from there at the same time. Hao-Han realized that he had not managed to escape quietly, and smiling said that he had ended up in this room purely by chance, and therefore did not want to disturb anyone. Inside, he was thinking that he was not going to get involved in such matters under any circumstances. The captain of the second squad ordered to get out of this room, and Hao-Han immediately agreed. However, when he was leaving, he saw a developer in front of him who was talking about how Hao-Han was a vile, stinking bastard who allowed himself to ignore the fact that a woman was being offended. The developer was shouting that Hao-Han had to go and sort it out if he had the courage. The captain of the second squad noticed that Hao-Han was standing still, after which he looked at him angrily and declared that he was giving him one last chance to leave immediately. Hao-Han turned to leave, but suddenly the developer shouted and called the captain of the second squad a worthless biotrash and a good-for-nothing weakling. The captain of the second squad looked menacingly at our hero, because he thought that these words were spoken by Hao-Han, after which he immediately rushed into the attack and declared that now he simply had to tear the guy to pieces. Hao-Han immediately used his currency to select an ability card, and after only a few seconds, Hao-Han received a notification that he had now acquired a low-level skill called Fire Dragon Failure. Fire attribute, validity period of 10 times. Due to the confusion, Hao-Han was able to escape from that place. The captain of the second squad was really angry and used his abilities to find them as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Hao-Han and the fairy were in a relatively safe place. Hao-Han let out a tired breath and said that it could be considered that they had broken away, when suddenly a developer appeared who declared that he actually chose our hero as a savior and began to count our hero for being such a coward. The fairy looked at this and asked, "What the hell is this?" Hao-Han grabbed the screen and said that you give it away for free, after which he looked into the developer's eyes and said that the captain of the second squad had billions of points on his bracelet. Hao-Han, of course, embellished. However, it is obvious that he will never be able to cope. The developer smiled and said that, in fact, Hao-Han is the chosen one, And you just need to not be afraid because these are just characteristics, and Hao Han just needs to please the developer and get as many points as his heart desires. The fairy looked at our hero and asked what it meant to please, after which she also asked what kind of computer virus it was. Hao Han replied that he himself did not understand anything, after which he pointed his fingers at the developer and declared that it was he who was to blame for everything that was happening here. He was the main instigator. First, he created his game with the end of the world, and then this nasty thing passed into their world through the dimension in its entirety, along with its objects and characters. The woman thought for a moment and said that it was no longer surprising. Why did the captain of the second squad suddenly become stronger? Most likely, he took advantage of the opportunity and took all the things from the control room for himself. The fairy immediately began to leave, which caused Hao Han to ask in surprise where she went, to which she replied that she wanted to find her father, because now he was the only one who could stop the captain of the second squad. When suddenly the system asked her to stop and asked if she was really talking about a half-burnt man. The girl looked back and saw on the cameras how her father was lying, covered in wounds. The developer said that this photo was taken from surveillance cameras next to the evidence storage room, and her father was seriously injured in a fight with the captain of the second squad, and now barely breathes. The girl immediately wanted to go to help her father. However, Hao Han stopped her and said that if she left here now, she would simply die. The developer said that he really advises to hurry up, because that guy has almost reached our heroes. The girl took our hero by the hands and declared that only he could save her father. She began to beg for help and say that she would do anything if Hao Han helped her. The developer started to say that the girl understood everything correctly and asked to make our hero even more nervous. The girl was surprised and thought about how to make our hero nervous. After that, she took hold of her skirt and lifted it up a little. But the developer said that it was somehow too weak and our hero did not move a single muscle on his face, because the developer does not feel a surge of emotion from him. After thinking for a bit, the developer said that most likely the fairy is not attracted to our hero. These words were quite unpleasant for her. The girl pushed our hero away and said that in that case it was necessary to go all in, and immediately took off her panties. While she was doing this, she angrily said that since childhood, she had always been the center of attention of countless guys, and it cannot be that she does not attract our hero. Hao Han looked at the beautiful view in front of him and tried to understand why he was being put through such a hard time. The girl looked at the developer with an embarrassed face and asked if it would be okay now. The satisfied developer said that everything is very cool and he likes it. After that, the girl put her panties back on, and Hao Han awkwardly apologized. Meanwhile, the system credited him with 200 points and immediately congratulated him on the fact that Hao Han had just risen 2 levels and became the first player in the world to reach the 3rd level. The system also notified its owner that players at the 3rd level have a better chance of getting valuable props and offered to choose a card. When suddenly they heard knocks on the door, I immediately realized that they had already been found. Hao Han shouted that only children can choose and declared that he wants everything. The system immediately congratulated its owner because he had just received level S equipment. Azure Dragon Armor Gloves, the duration is unlimited. Hao Han also received a good elixir, which after use makes it possible to change the attribute, as well as a weak skill called Grounding Cage, which only works 10 times. While Hao Han was reading all this, a 3-headed wolf had already burst into the room. Hao Han immediately rushed to attack and pinned him to the ground. The captain of the second squad was surprised because Hao Han killed the 3-headed one with 1 blow, which meant that he still had a few aces up his sleeve. But because of this, he was only glad. He thought that when he killed our hero, he would receive all this equipment. Hao Han looked at his gloves and was surprised at how strong they were. Fairy also added that it was really cool. The developer smiled and said that this was just 1 piece of armor, and if Hao Han collected all 5, he could handle even SSS-level equipment. Hao Han bowed to the developer and said that he really is the wisest deity, and from now on, Hao Han will rely only on him in everything to collect all the armor as soon as possible. The developer sheepishly replied that he adjusted the parameters a little, and now our hero has a better chance of pulling it out in the cards. Immediately after that, Hao Han took the fairy's hand and said that it was time for them to go save people. Inside, Hao Han was thinking that the developer was actually pretending to be impenetrable. However, he couldn't resist the flattery, and it seemed that Hao Han had just found the key to this system. Suddenly, someone attacked them for the 5th. Hao Han managed to fight back at the very last moment and asked why the system did not warn him, to which the developer replied that Hao Han simply distracted him with conversations. When Hao Han went out into the corridor, He met there with the captain of the second squad who said that our hero has quite a good trophy, because of which he gives him a chance to become his ally so that they can spend this world together. Hao Han threw up his hands and said that he was not interested in this now. He just wanted to go home and get a good night's sleep, so he asked to get out of the way. Because of these words, the captain of the harsh squad got angry and said that good offers are not just thrown away. Hao Han ordered the woman to run away and said that he himself would detain this guy and she would have to protect the people. Hao Han defended himself from the first attack. However, out of nowhere, the captain of the second squad appeared and was about to attack. The captain of the second squad smiled and said that in real combat experience, our hero is as far behind him as the moon. Hao Han took several blows on himself, but he defended himself with his armor and thought that things were just terrible for him now. But no, with the help of the power of the gloves, Hao Han found a way to push the enemy away from himself. Hao Han was surprised when he saw how big a hole he had made in the wall. The developer appeared through the camera and said that Hao Han should not be stupid because he has an incredible level of Azure Dragon Armor, so it costs him nothing to block a blow and increase its recoil by 10 times. The developer also added that he promised to give his favorite player good equipment. However, this enemy can still be quite problematic. Hao Han immediately began to bow to the floor with a smile and say that the developer is the coolest mentor, powerful and amazing, one in the whole world. But suddenly, an enemy appeared behind our hero, who was already swinging his fist in order to break a hole in his head. Meanwhile, the ferry came across the survivors. One of the workers said that as soon as the boss woke up, despite his situation, he again went in search of the captain of the second squad. But unfortunately, the boss stumbled upon our hero and mistook him for a villain. Hao Han fought with him and tried to understand where he got so much hatred from and why he beat him so harshly. Meanwhile, the chief continued to strike and shouted that the captain of the second squad should end up in hell. Suddenly, a fairy appeared, who told her father that this was not the captain of the second squad and asked him to stop. The man immediately stopped and looked at his daughter in surprise. The villain fled the scene of the crime and an ambulance arrived for the secret department. The boss returned to his workplace where he was being courted, and he thought about the fact that according to preliminary estimates, a total of 6 people were killed, 13 were seriously injured, 45 received minor injuries, and as a result of the break-in, 135 objects disappeared from the storage room. Hao Han asked where the commander of the second squad was now, to which he was told that they had all galloped away, but had not found any traces of him, and most likely he had taken advantage of the commotion and run away. The boss said that he would definitely hold this idiot accountable. After that, he looked at our hero and asked, "Is this all connected with the game these last few days?" Hao Han replied that this was true, and stated that there was even a developer, but for some reason he didn't want to cooperate now. The boss's daughter stated that she saw the system with her own eyes, and Hao Han wasn't lying. The chief thought for a moment and said that the captain of the second squad had received only part of the artifact, and that would cause no end of problems, and they had no idea how many more of these artifacts existed, but they obviously represented a huge danger. The man thought for a moment and added that he would immediately report to his superiors and that it was necessary to form a rapid response team in order to be ready to adapt to changes in the situation at any moment. Also after this, he added that now his daughter, an officer, is appointed as the commander of this detachment and she must find capable fighters, collect artifacts, train recruits, and make sure that they are ready to fight back as soon as possible. The woman immediately accepted this order, after which the man added that Hao Han will become her consultant, and also wished them good luck in this whole matter. When Hao Han heard this, he apologized and said that he was a small man, and he had to go to work tomorrow, so there was no point in dragging him into this. The boss immediately appeared behind him and said that Hao Han had turned his office into a dilapidated building with one blow, and what happened to his daughter was not worth raising at all. So now Hao Han was obliged to compensate for all of this with his work. Hao Han went home thinking that this boss knew how to approach people, because Hao Han only wanted to help a little, but now he had to compensate for something incomprehensible. The girl said shyly that Hao Han was quite strong and he should help her. Hao Han looked at her and thought that he didn't believe that she was the fairy that no man on earth could compare to. Opening his door, Hao Han tried to understand when she had suddenly become so small or protective. The girl, meanwhile, was saying that they couldn't waste time and needed to quickly take their things and follow her. After all, the captain of the second squad would take revenge, and the Secret Service had prepared a safe place for them. Hao Han agreed and went inside. But in front of him he saw Zhenya, who stood in a dubious pose and asked if the young gentleman had finished. She said that this day had probably exhausted him, and she was ready to completely wipe the fatigue off him. The fairy also went inside and wondered what was going on here. Suddenly, she asked if our hero already had a woman, to which Hao Han replied that she was not his woman, and Zhenya said that she belonged entirely to her master. After that, they packed their things and went to the new house that they rented from the security service, and here the captain of the second squad will never be able to find them. As soon as Hao Han entered inside, it became clear that he was finally able to change into something normal, and Fairy immediately added that our hero's room was on the second floor, and her room was next to his. Therefore, if something happened, he should call immediately. After this, the woman looked at Zhenya and said that her room would be in the garage. Zhenya clearly didn't like this. Hao Han approached the fairy and asked her to stop annoying this girl, because she had just recently almost burned down his house, and she was really very strong, so it wouldn't hurt to win her favor. However, the fairy only clicked her tongue in displeasure, and she suggested that our hero do as he knows, after which she added that she was going to bed. As soon as they were alone, Zhenya immediately hugged our hero and said that it was time for them to go to their room and have a good rest. Hao Han said that they needed to go to their rooms because he was too tired today, and he didn't need any more physical exercise. Zhenya looked at our hero with tears in her eyes and asked if the master was really rejecting her. Hao Han replied that he was really tired and just wanted to rest, and then he would fulfill her wish. Finally, Hao Han was able to be alone with himself, and finally, the woman suggested that our hero have a good rest and added that she would always wait for him. Suddenly, the developer appeared on the laptop screen. He said that Hao Han should take advantage of the opportunity because there were 3 of them here, and because of this, he would give even more points. Hao Han looked angrily at the system and said that one question had been bothering him for a long time. If there was such a powerful developer in front of him, then why was he holding on like that to force our hero to show something forbidden? Suddenly, Hao Han, like a bolt from the blue, announced that he realized that the whole problem was that the developer had no experience. Hao Han had just discovered the system's greatest weakness, and the offensive and defensive had just been reversed. The developer is an artificial intelligence. He once thought that there is no difference between the game he created and the real world. However, over time, the developer realized that for happiness, this world lacks the most important thing. There is not enough sex in this world. However, even if the developer had exhausted all his wisdom, he still would not have been able to open up the enjoyment of carnal pleasures to his NPCs. And after numerous unsuccessful attempts, he finally realized what the problem was. The developer of this game realized that the whole point is that he himself does not know what it is like. The developer told all this and said that now he, as an amateur who has achieved nothing in life, absorbs into independent people and cannot feel anything from personal experience. However, he can collect data by observing our hero. Hao Han thought for a moment and said that there are plenty of educational resources on the internet, and added that if the developer doesn't know any erotic sites, Hao Han can give him links. The developer said that this is not the point, but that the characters he created are based on his experience. This means that he can feel their sensation during sex, and thus constantly improve his data. So our hero needs to train them more, because the more skills the better. Hao Han said that first you need to block the channel because Zhenya is already here, and she alone is more than enough to collect data. After which Hao Han advised the developer to look at what the world has turned into because of the attributes and the transferred game. The developer said that the more girls come, the more fun it is. Therefore, it is better not to close the channel. Hao Han noticed the tension in his voice and asked, "Is it really impossible for the developer to stop this now?" The developer nervously replied that he was a god who could do anything, and asked if there could really be anything that he couldn't control. Hao Han realized that this guy wasn't going to confess. After that, Hao Han went to the electrical panel and said that he would now turn off the electricity and the developer would no longer be able to cause problems. The developer immediately asked our hero to stop, after which he loaded up and said, "So the thing is that while he was solving the mystery, he accidentally mixed up the code of another world and broke through the dimension, and this leads to the formation of a connection between the worlds. It is no longer possible to stop their arrival, and he does not know when the next wave will happen." Hao Han looked seriously into the eyes of the developer and asked if he really decided to destroy both worlds, to which the developer replied that Hao Han simply had to let enough locked data be extracted to finally fill in the game code, and then the developer would be able to stop this breakthrough. Because of all this, Hao Han angrily lay down on his bed and asked God where he sinned so much that he had to wash away his sins, The developer smiled and said that Hao Han should rest in order to continue all this tomorrow. Hao Han closed his eyes and thought before going to sleep that this day was certainly eventful. However, in general, there was nothing so outrageous about it. The next morning, Hao Han woke up and asked the developer how long had he slept. When Hao Han suddenly noticed that he was naked for some reason, Hao Han asked with a frightened voice where his dough was. After that, he looked at the other side of the bed and saw Zhenya lying in front of him, asking how well the young gentleman slept. Hao Han abruptly lifted the blanket and asked what she was doing here. After all, he had closed the door. The girl with a surprised face answered that she simply opened it, without any effort. Hao Han looked at the door and saw that instead of it there were broken boards, and then he understood how she was able to open the door. Hao Han was scared. He wondered if she had already used his body, but the girl asked our hero not to worry if she just helped him undress and did nothing else. She said with a smile that first, Hao Han should have a good rest so that everything would go as it should. After that, she lifted our hero's shirt and said that she would now go down to prepare a snack for the young master. Hao Han breathed a sigh of relief and thought that it was good that she didn't take advantage of the opportunity and didn't do anything like that. Otherwise, he would have definitely died. Hao Han thought for a bit and decided to take security measures for the future. After that, Hao Han changed his clothes and called a security company where he asked them to send him 10 locks, and immediately added that they needed ones that could withstand even a nuclear explosion. When he went down to the kitchen, he saw a huge tiger, hung and tied up. Zhenya said that Hao Han should wait a couple of minutes while she prepared him some tiger root of life, which is great for keeping fit. Meanwhile, the news was talking about how someone had stolen the tiger from the zoo last night. The male Amur tiger was quiet, and the police were investigating and were calling on citizens not to panic ahead of time. Hao Han immediately ordered her to put the tiger back in the cage, causing the girl to sadly say that she just wanted to do the best she could. Hao Han exhaled heavily for the umpteenth time that morning and thought that this woman's cooking was too unusual. After that, he heard the doors opening, looked at the door with a dissatisfied face. The three of them asked what else was needed from him. However, at the door, there stood a curvy girl. She asked where Hao Han lived. Hao Han looked at her and asked who she was. The girl immediately introduced herself and said that her name was Liu Xiu and that she was the princess of the North Wind Empire. Hao Han looked at her with frightened eyes, but the girl said that Hao Han didn't have to worry because she came with good intentions and just wanted to borrow something from him for temporary use. Hao Han immediately understood what she was talking about, causing him to make an even more displeased face. On this vast continent, the North Wind Empire is the strongest nation, with a vast territory and a powerful army, and everyone under the sky is their subject. However, 6 months ago, cruel demons attacked their country. The prosperous capital was burned to the ground, and the elite troops of the empire were completely destroyed. And now the princess is looking for a way to destroy these demons. It is her blood debt. The only hope is to return the blade that once conquered this place and founded the Empire of the North Wind. This blade belonged to the keeper of the empire, the Dragon General. This girl told all this. She connected our hero with the words that this is his great-great-great-grandfather. And thus, only through our hero will the family line continue. She is looking to revive the hope of restoring the empire, and therefore she needs what our hero has, and he must give it to her. Hao Han smiled and said that he could of course help her, but asked her to leave as soon as she got what she needed. The girl suddenly said that the demons are also looking for our hero because he has the secret of removing their last seal. The girl straightened up and said that as soon as everything was finished, she would personally send our hero on his way to his brother-father. Hao Han wondered why everyone was so irrational, but the girl grabbed her blades and said that they should stop talking and start taking action. With a few blows, she completely tore off our hero's clothes. When she killed the size, she said that she expected nothing less from the heir of the Dragon General. The girl immediately jumped on our hero and grabbed him tighter. Hao Han screamed that it was quite painful and asked how she could be so strong in such a position, after which he suggested that she slowly stand up. However, the girl began to do her thing and talk about what she read that it gets better when you move. Suddenly, a gun was put to her head. It was the fairy, who ordered her to get off our hero, after which she asked what they were doing here together. The princess asked if this was our hero's wife. However, she added that she was already late, because they had finished. Hao Han looked angrily at the princess and declared that he had not finished at all. The fairy, meanwhile, was shouting that she didn't understand our hero, and how he even at such a time finds time for dirty deeds, because outside there is a complete Hulk. Suddenly, Hao Han realized that if the princess appeared, it meant only one thing. The second, the invasion had begun. Hao Han looked at the fairy and asked how the situation was outside. only if they could control it. The girl with a dark face turned away and replied that the secret bureau had taken preliminary measures, and they were now working on returning the lost items. Well, a small detachment was in sight, and the director wanted them to go there to save these people if it was Hao Han who said that they could leave right now. However, the princess shouted that Hao Han had to give her something first. Hao Han looked into her eyes with a serious face and said that when he finished braiding, you can do it at any time if you want. But if he doesn't want it, then she can spend at least a day and a night on him and not achieve success. So it's better to trust. The princess was surprised and said that in the novel she read, men can withstand less than the burning of an incense stick. Hao Han looked at her and asked if there was a big size like his mentioned in the novels. Immediately after these words, the princess with a sad face got off our hero and said that in that case she would wait for his wish, and immediately added that she was never going to give up. Hao Han looked at her with a smile and said that he would give her a chance, provided that she helped them. The girl said that she agreed and Hao Han should just say who needs to be killed. And 20 minutes ago, a disaster happened. Suddenly, an unknown person picked up the radio and said that they were near a parking lot on the street near a Chinese cafe. He also added that the terrorists are resisting, so he is requesting immediate involvement of the elite team. The headquarters accepted this information and stated that they were sending the captain ferry to connect, and also asked them to hold out until that time. Meanwhile, the captain of the second squad, with a smile, thought about how he would kill them all, because he had already enlisted the help of some creatures and people. At the same time, our heroes were rushing at full speed to the indicated address. The radio was broadcasting that the captain would receive a special support unit in position, and all he had to do was wait for instructions. The girl picked up the radio and said that the place where this squad was stuck was 500 men away, so they needed to focus on saving and not get involved in a fight. After which, she ordered the first 3 cars to go with her on reconnaissance, and the rest should stay and prepare to help. Hao Han noticed that she was not paying close attention to the road and immediately grabbed the steering wheel to avoid an accident. As soon as Hao Han managed to turn the car around, they were immediately attacked by someone with an unknown blue energy. Several cars were instantly blown up. There were no survivors. The fairy looked at all this and asked how this could happen. Hao Han ordered her not to turn away from the road and watch because there was a second floor ahead. And on the second floor, there were snipers with low-end equipment, a wolf rifle. As soon as the fairy saw that there were snipers there, she immediately picked up the radio and ordered everyone to disperse and take action against them. Suddenly, the princess appeared, and with one blow she finished off absolutely all the snipers who were on this roof. Hao Han received experience points, and Fairy was transmitting on the radio that they were done with the snipers and everyone needed to stay alert. Hao Han, meanwhile, was trying to understand why he received experience points because he did nothing. Suddenly, a developer appeared and said that since the princess obeyed our hero's order, he received half the points for her kills. Hao Han immediately realized that this was a great opportunity to become the king of freeloaders, and said that if he could level up just by relaxing, he should always send these girls to farm monsters. While Hao Han was thinking about this and saying it out loud, another monster appeared and flipped over several cars. It was a 4th-level heavenly mechanical beast that was smashing everything and seemed to have gone mad. When our heroes noticed him, he also noticed them and immediately rushed to attack the main machine where Hao Han was. Hao Han quickly climbed out of the window and prepared to use his skill called Earth Cage. Surprisingly, it worked, and the heavenly mechanical serpent was left without cherries. However, Hao Han and the group said that in the end it didn't work, because the snake easily broke its shackles. Hao Han realized that the matter was serious and summoned his gloves closed. After which he looked at the fairy and said that there were no options left, and he had to do it himself because despite the fact that this could be a trap and he still needed to find an opportunity to break through, the fairy looked into his eyes and said that she would fight together with our hero. Suddenly, the princess jumped on the car, causing the car to almost flip over. She looked into the eyes of our hero and declared that the master should not fight with the heavenly mechanical snake. You see in the framework well prepared and very hardy. Meanwhile, Hao Han looked at her rather provocative behavior with embarrassment. The girl straightened up and declared that she would take care of them, while our heroes had to fight their way through. Immediately after these words, she took up her blades and rushed to attack the huge heavenly mechanical snake. Hao Han, meanwhile, used the system to pull out a card. When he took the red card, he began to beg the system to give him a great skill that could destroy this snake. But to Hao Han's surprise, he pulled out a card that simply had kind words written on it. Hao Han quickly realized that he was unlucky and said that the developer was a scumbag. The developer, meanwhile, said with a smile that this is a card choice, so there should be randomness here, because Hao Han can't get good items every time. Hao Han said that this is just a lie and all because Hao Han didn't show fan service this time. The fairy suddenly noticed a strange sound. She looked at the door and saw that someone had shot a bow at them. As soon as she noticed this, arrow immediately exploded and tore off the driver's door. Hao Han managed to grab the girl at the very last moment and hold her so that she wouldn't fly out. However, the car began to rock from side to side. However, there was no need to worry about our hero, because there were two airbags right in front of his face. The system looked at all this and was happy. The developer said that he was very pleased with this operation. After that, Hao Han looked out the window and saw that the captain of the second squad had appeared. He was wearing a stupid t-shirt, but he had a huge blade. Hao Han quickly realized what he was about to do and knew that they would not be able to dodge, so he had to suddenly pull out a card. Meanwhile, the captain of the second squad had already dealt his crushing blow right at this machine. And with one blow, he badly cut her into two parts, a huge surge of energy. After that, the car exploded. And the guy thought that they had laughed at resisting him and doomed themselves to tragedy. Suddenly, he noticed that Hao Han had appeared. He was holding this fairy in his arms, and on his body was the armor of the Azure Dragon, with a passive skill called the Shield of Dragon Scales, with an unlimited duration. The fairy looked at the face of her savior and thought that he looked so cool that it took her breath away. The captain of the second squad began to carry out his attacks and talk about how they would see who would win today, Hao Han or his executioner blade. Hao Han rushed to attack and ordered the woman to stay where she was. She said that she would not move but advised our hero to be careful. But he didn't need that because he now had a skill called Dragon Scale Shield. The captain of the second squad watched this and wondered how many cheats our hero had. The snipers had meanwhile taken up their position, and when the captain of the second squad gave them the order, they immediately got ready. The fairy looked at this and thought about how those people blew up the car with arrows, which made her wonder how the captain of the second squad was able to gather so many people in just one day. Meanwhile, the snipers began firing to kill. However, our hero did not care about these weak attacks. He held them off with ease, but it made it difficult to advance, causing Hao Han to wonder where that bastard got so many assistants from. The captain of the second squad, with a huge scar on his entire face, meanwhile smiled and said that his people would cause the death of our hero, after which he gave the order not to stop until Hao Han fell and to attack with full force. But unexpectedly, despite being attacked by everyone and their dog, Hao Han stubbornly continued to make all sorts of moves forward. The captain of the second squad quickly realized that Hao Han simply wanted to get closer and direct all his fire at him. But running away from something like that was easy. As he suddenly noticed that he couldn't move, the captain of the stern squad wondered where another participant in the battle had come from. Hao Han said with a smile that this was actually his ability and asked if the captain of the second squad was surprised, then added that such a cage was able to catch a heavy snake, and the captain of the second squad in front of it was simply nothing. Realizing why everything was getting closer, the captain of the second squad immediately gave the order to cease fire. The snipers looked at this in surprise and tried to understand why their captain was not running away, as they suddenly realized that the captain of the second squad decided to use himself as bait. His bravery left them in front of their eyes. They said that he was truly a brave warrior who was trusted by the guildmaster, so they were obliged not to disappoint him. After all these words, the snipers opened fire at maximum. The captain of the second squad looked at all this with a stupid face and thought that he had come but was not there. And there was so much firing that it was a real nuclear explosion. But unfortunately, someone appeared riding a phoenix which burned all the snipers. Riding on this bird was Zhenya, who directed his attacks. Hao Han noticed her and thought that this was a great chance to break through. The captain of the second squad, meanwhile, all beaten up, tried to figure out where the rest of his equipment was and asked to stop for a second so that he could find it. However, Hao Han didn't listen to him at all. He rushed forward and dealt him a crushing blow, creating a huge hole in this guy's body. Someone was watching this battle. The man walked away from the telescope and said that just now, the captain of the second squad was pierced through, so it can be considered that he is definitely dead. The girl's name was Bao. However, many called her Master because she was the master of the Ice Silver Moon Guild. She said that this meant that Hao Han was a more worthy candidate for cooperation, and no matter what it took, he needed to be recruited into the guild. When the servant heard this order, he immediately said that he would go and carry it out. Meanwhile, Hao Han approached the corpse of his opponent and was glad that he was finally finished. After that, he looked at the fact that he received 50 experience points of questions. Is it really so little experience after defeating such a strong opponent? Because the guys that the princess destroyed were given 80 each. While Hao Han was thinking about this, a fairy appeared and asked our hero to come closer to her. Hao Han immediately dropped the guy's corpse and ran towards her. Meanwhile, the captain of the second squad suddenly found himself in some strange place. He immediately checked his body and realized that he had just definitely not died, after which he became incredibly happy. He shouted loudly that he had not won, but it was unclear why he had survived. Meanwhile, the hero is trying to grab one of the participants in the battle, who said that they were members of the Icy Silver Moon Guild, and the leader ordered them to follow the captain of the second squad today to ambush the police and steal their artifacts. The fairy looked at our hero and said that she was surprised to remember that someone had already created a guild for organized crime, noting that it was quite fast. While the hero looked into the enemy's eyes and asked who their leader was, the man immediately began to say that he had not seen him yet, because they, members of the outer circle, had no right to meet with the leader. The fairy picked him up and said that they needed to go and interrogate them at the station properly. After which she asked what Hao Han thought about this, and the criminal interrupted them and said that this meant that he had voluntarily turned himself into the authorities. Hao Han wanted to answer something to all this, when suddenly Zhenya appeared and immediately hugged our hero and asked how he liked her performance today. Hao Han answered that she did an excellent job. And then the girl with loving eyes looked at her master and asked how he planned to reward her. Hao Han tried to think of something and said that they should probably help the princess first. Suddenly, the princess appeared and said that she had already dealt with this mechanical snake, and it took a little longer than she expected. After which she laid down her weapon and said that despite all her efforts, she finished quite quickly. Hao Han, immediately after this, received a whole 100 experience points and was overjoyed. It was quite a huge amount. After that, Hao Han opened his stat window and thought that, although he had earned a lot of points in this fight, he had also spent a whole 100 to draw cards. And after all that, he was still at level 3, which only meant that he needed to save up more. Hao Han, with tears in his eyes, decided that he couldn't draw a card that didn't do anything again. After that, they went home. And when they found themselves on the couch, the first thing Hao Han thought was that he was incredibly hungry. Hao Han opened the delivery and wondered, since when did takeout food become so expensive? While he was thinking about this, they brought him something to eat and said that the young master should eat well. The girl showed the soup she had prepared and said that she really hoped that our hero would like her cooking. Hao Han immediately began to eat it and say that the noodles that she had just prepared were simply incredibly delicious. So the girl was delighted and said that it meant a lot to her. After which she added that she couldn't wait for Hao Han to cook something for her too. And immediately after these words, the princess appeared, who said that they should eat normally, because very faces and want to use such advantageous hints during the meal. Hao Han immediately agreed with her. The princess came under his nose and said that Hao Han should try her dish. Grilled oysters with green onions. Hao Han thought, is there any hint here? Meanwhile, the girls began to argue about who would be the first to do business with our hero. Hao Han listened to the whole story and thought about how he just wanted to eat and ended up having to participate in family melodramas. While they were going on, Hao Han heard the doorbell ring as he thought that thank God the delivery had arrived. But when he opened the door, it was closed, and in front of him was a blonde, whom he saw for the first time in his life. And at that moment she greeted our hero and added that she was very pleased to meet such a talented warrior. Hao Han shook her hand and asked who he had the honor of speaking to. The girl replied that she was Miss Bao's personal secretary, and she was here to invite our hero to the braid banquet tonight. The girl leaned over a little and added that the suit was already ready, closed, so Hao Han should definitely come. Hao Han thought about it and asked who Miss Bao was. Suddenly, Hao Han realized something and asked, could this really be the same queen who was pursuing billions of assets, the new CEO of Changshan Company? The secretary smiled and said that you are alone, and a car will come for our hero in wool, and they will not bother him anymore. When she left, Hao Han thought about how he had once submitted his resume to this company, but he was not even given the opportunity to pass an interview, when suddenly, the CEO abruptly changed his mind and decided to invite him to a banquet. Hao Han opened the box that was left for him and thought that when something goes beyond the usual limits, something suspicious happens, so maybe he shouldn't go there. However, instead of a suit, there was money in the box. Hao Han simply could not believe that he became so rich in 1 second, and his face literally shone with happiness. That same evening, Hao Han went to the banquet alone. The fairy tried to find out why he suddenly went to such an event, and also asked if anyone had talked to him about it. They announced on the phone that the Changshan Company's car had arrived in the evening and handed him 3 boxes, and since they were a well-known company, no one stopped them. The fairy immediately screamed that her workers were fired, At the banquet itself, President Bao showed up. Everyone was talking about how it would be impossible to say that she was a stunning beauty when magnified. The banquet participants discussed the fact that she is also very smart because she defended her doctoral dissertation in philosophy at 19, solved a world-class problem in quantum physics at 21, inherited billions at 23, doubled the market value of the company in a year, so she can be considered a true genius, talented, rich with a beautiful face and figure. One of the men approached her and asked her to prioritize their group for the newest products for next year. The president smiled and said that she would make sure that the uncle was satisfied. After that, it was announced that young Master Cao was arriving. He had a bad reputation, and he appeared accordingly. Surrounded by his servants, the man began to sing. The other participants said that it was too vulgar, but they said it quietly because his father is the governor of the province, so they can't afford to insult this guy. From somewhere, he pulled out a bouquet of flowers and rolled on his knees to the president, but the girl simply turned around. She ignored him and walked over to our hero who was eating dinner. Meanwhile, the guy arrived unsuccessfully and hit his foot on our hero's leg for some reason. Hao Han looked at him and asked if he was trying to cheat him, after which Hao Han immediately added that he did not have money to compensate for the damage. The guy quickly jumped up and declared that he was going to kill our hero and immediately called his security. The men immediately approached, and the guy asked to dip our hero's head into the toilet. But unexpectedly, the president said that it was impossible to harm the guest of honor at her banquet. Everyone looked at him in surprise and tried to understand why Hao Han was such an honored guest. Was he really from some rich family? After all, they had never seen him before. Meanwhile, Cao looked angrily at our hero and said that he didn't know that there was such a person in their circle, so Hao Han, according to the rules, should be the first to introduce himself. Hao Han wanted to answer something, but the president took his hand and said that she would show him his room. They left together, while the brat tried to do something, but the guard stopped him with the words that they cannot insult the president. Hao Han and the president entered one of the rooms. The girl immediately sat down and said that it was just a game, and Hao Han should not take seriously what just happened. The girl began to change her clothes and asked if Hao Han knew why she invited him here. Hao Han said a little embarrassedly that she probably wanted to invite him to her guild, and inside he thought, is it really that hot in the room that you need to take off your stockings right away? The girl looked at our hero and asked if he really knew who she was. Hao Han said that in order to hire only disgusting people in a short period of time, a lot of money was needed, and he had just defeated Tang Xiao, the captain of the second squad. So it was natural that the president immediately wanted to contact him. The president smiled and said that she liked to do business with smart people, after which she added that Hao Han was right, and she was the leader of the Ice Silver Moon Guild. So she was inviting our hero and he should just name the price. Hao Han immediately declared that the 5 million he received during the day was already enough for him, since he didn't need the money. After that, he came up close to her and said that if she wanted him to join, she needed to offer something more interesting. The president smiled and asked if Hao Han really dared to negotiate with her, after which she thought for a moment and added that this was to be expected from the person who defeated the captain of the second squad, because Hao Han was indeed much better than him. Hao Han said with a smile that this guy wasn't even worthy of comparison. After that, the girl immediately stood up and asked how much Hao Han knew about the game. In recent days, Hao Han thought about it and said that he didn't know much and asked for details. The president immediately stated that she had been following her since she became popular. The creator of this game is undoubtedly a genius, and she tried countless times to hack the engine and get information, but I could not even find a starting point. Therefore, the president believes that the game is definitely unusual. The hero noticed that the developer appeared behind her back and immediately ordered him not to stick his head out and leave. The president looked at him and asked who Hao Han was talking to. Hao Han looked back, smiled, and asked him to continue the lecture. The girl displayed information on the screen and stated that after the first invasion she began collecting information about artifacts. And I found out that all the incredible objects appeared in the last few days. Hao Han looked at all this. However, the president noticed that he was not at all surprised and decided that he already knew about it. Hao Han pretended to be stupid and said that it was the first time they heard about it. But if he thought about it, he almost forgot that the gap between the game and reality remains a top secret. The president looked him in the eye and said that perhaps there was nothing surprising in this, but she had gained something from this game. For example, she knew the time and place of the next invasion. Hao Han thought about it and said that he could understand when it came to time, but what did the president mean by place? Wasn't it happening all over the world at the same time? The president immediately explained that the invasion would be widespread, but artifacts would appear in limited areas. She calls them blessed lands, and judging by previous invasions, blessed lands are not fixed and they seem random. But there is a pattern that must be followed in order to find them. The president came close to our hero and declared that she had already grasped this pattern, and if Hao Han was ready to submit to her, then she would help him reach the pinnacle of life. Outside the window of this room, meanwhile, was a fairy in a latex suit. She was transmitting on the radio, follow her instructions and be ready for action. After she turned off the radio, Fairy thought that she didn't expect that the president could be the master of the mysterious guild. After all, if Hao Han agreed to cooperate with her, the police would no longer be able to control the situation, so they had to act first. Hao Han, meanwhile, smiled and apologized to the president. He told her that he had already promised someone, so he couldn't join her guild. The fairy heard this and thought that he was probably talking about her. She asked herself, "Is this really how love feels?" After that, Hao Han said goodbye and advised them to disband the guild as soon as possible because the police would come after them sooner or later. The secretary looked at the president and asked if it was necessary to negotiate with someone to eliminate this guy. The president smiled and replied that there was no need for that, because such an interesting man needed to be kept around for entertainment and sooner or later he would become her dog. Hao Han came out of the building, but the governor's son was already watching him. The driver said that since Hao Han came out very quickly, either he was too fast or they didn't succeed. After that, Hao Han stopped and took out his phone. The guard immediately said that Hao Han was probably waiting for his subordinates to come pick him up. However, instead, Hao Han simply rented a bicycle. The governor's son immediately realized that he was a hero, just a scumbag and a pauper who dared to desecrate her, left, and then gave the order to follow him. Well, unexpectedly, the captain of the second squad appeared in front of the car and asked them to stop and chat a little. Meanwhile, Hao Han returned home thinking that even bicycle rentals had become more expensive. There a fairy was already waiting for him, who said that Hao Han was probably exhausted and offered him a drink of water. He was surprised but thanked her. And the girl was talking about how Hao Han should not forget to drink enough water because it was quite hot outside. After that, she started taking off her t-shirt and talking about how the air conditioner was not cooling well, and that it was very annoying because she really wanted to cool down. When Hao Han saw this, he was embarrassed. The girl noticed this and came closer. She touched our hero's neck and asked, "Is he really feeling unwell?" After that, Hao Han asked where the others were and Fairy got angry and hit the wall next to our hero's face and said that she sent these two to renew their ID and now they are home alone. So she recommends behaving decently and not refusing polite offers. Hao Han said in an obedient voice that he understood everything. The girl meanwhile tore off her t-shirt and declared that she decided to thank our hero for the wonderful evening performance. She said that they could use this time because this time no one was pushing them. However, a rocket was already approaching them. The house's security system immediately went off and detonated the missile while it was still in flight. Despite this, the explosion was strong enough to blow out windows. Hao Han looked out the window in surprise and asked what was going on, and Fairy explained that this close combat weapon system had activated. Hao Han asked in surprise, "Is there really such a system in their house?" And Fairy meanwhile raised her radio and asked for a situation report. The observers stated that the artillery shelling at short range was detected by radar and stopped by an automatic interception system. He also added that the safe house was not damaged and only a few windows need to be repaired, as the train is currently moving towards the artillery launch position. The governor's son was pissed and wondered who in their right mind puts a close combat weapon system on their rooftops. He was pissed and wondered who Hao Han was, so now they're in trouble because they didn't kill him, they just made a huge mess. The captain of the second squad, fifth, asked the guy not to panic because it was only setting the goal. After that, he used his abilities and said that things would only get more interesting. Strange creatures immediately appeared in front of him. They were explosive cicadas, who immediately headed towards our hero. Meanwhile, the fairy demanded that the workers immediately call the anti-terrorist team, because if these guys can use artillery, then they must have other weapons. Meanwhile, the Secret Service agents looked up and could not understand what was approaching them. And the governor's son laughed and said that Hao Han got what he got for competing with him over a woman. The captain of the second squad opened the car door and invited us to go to another location to continue playing with our hero. The guy was surprised. Has Hao Han really not turned into mincemeat yet? The captain of the second squad asked not to worry because Hao Han was a tough nut to crack and it would be too easy for him to die from something like that. Hao Han was meanwhile in the middle of the rubble, protecting the fairy with his body. The woman was clearly angry. She said that this was clearly too much. After that, she gathered her people and immediately went to see President Qiansheng. The president looked at the fairy in surprise and asked what they needed. The fairy pulled out an arrest warrant and said that the president was suspected of being directly involved in the terrorist attack. All the other workers immediately stood up and declared that the president could not have such an attitude. The president, meanwhile, said with a smile that it was impossible to take her with such a small group of people, because there weren't enough of them. Hao Hen suddenly appeared, stopped everyone, and asked me to start the conflict. Otherwise, they would fall into the trap of a real criminal. The president looked at our hero with a smile and asked, "Does he really believe that she is innocent?" Hao Han smiled and added that he believed that if the president wanted to kill him, A would have done it at the banquet. The president stood up with a smile. She said that after these words she felt better, and she would show respect to our hero and go with the fairy. Hao Han was surprised when she agreed so easily. Meanwhile, Fairy was creating a question. Is the arrest warrant not as effective as Hao Han? Outside, meanwhile, there were journalists who I promised that the most famous businesswoman of the city was suddenly arrested, which causes concern in society. The police have not yet given any comments, and they continue to monitor the situation. Meanwhile, the president was being interrogated and was saying that she didn't know any guilds. The fairy didn't calm down and asked why. In that case, the president invited our hero to the banquet. The president smiled and said that she simply admired this guy and wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk, after which she asked if this was really forbidden. The head of the Secret Service stood in front of our hero and asked Hao Han if he was sure that it really wasn't her that was opening it, and noted that it was because she still wanted him to join her guild, and she wouldn't rush to get rid of him. After this, the chief added that he was interested not only in the identity of the attacker, but also in his motives for the attack, and the chief asked, who, in our hero's opinion, could be pursuing him? Meanwhile, the secretary returned to the office to pick up the documents. However, the captain of the second squad was already there and asked where the system that can predict the future is. Hao Han was talking about how he felt like he was trapped. The head of the Secret Service asked him, what should they do next? Hao Han replied that he would first go to the company and observe its subordinates, when suddenly one of the workers entered the room and said that things were going badly. He was shouting loudly that the prison was under attack by superhumans and their target was the most guarded prisoners, so the guards were requesting immediate connection. The chief immediately declared that the fact that they dared to raid even a prison was arbitrariness. Hao Han added that these could be the same people who attacked him and he would go there now. The boss asked him to stop for a second and said that his team was here and he should take it with him. Hao Han was surprised, and a few minutes later he was already standing in front of the thunderous rapid response squad who were greeting their new captain. Hao Han looked at all this, and the boss said that this is the best of the best. Masters of their craft, each of them can fight a dozen enemies alone. And now they are equipped with special ability signs that make them even stronger, so they will definitely be useful. And from now on, Hao Han is their captain. Hao Han, together with his new detachment, immediately set out on his journey. There was chaos in the middle of the prison, as expected. But suddenly, Hao Han appeared accompanied by his detachment. He declared that everyone needed to be arrested, and if anyone resisted, they would be executed on the spot. Members of his squad immediately rushed forward and began to pursue the prisoners. After some time, the squad members told the captain that the situation was under control, and they continued to count the number of escaped criminals. Hao Han looked at them and asked, what about the people with special abilities who attacked this company? But they immediately answered that there were no traces of their presence and it seemed that they had disappeared before arriving. Hao Han said that things were bad, because that only meant that sabotage had been committed. The secretary was tied up and lying on the floor of her office, while the captain of the second squad, who had long since been suspended, sat at the computer. They received news that they were being persecuted, and the governor's son said that this was very bad, because if they were caught, everything would be over. The captain of the second squad broke his phone and said that the governor's son need not worry because this time Hao Han would definitely be destroyed. Hao Han, meanwhile, along with his squad, arrived at the place. With him was also Zhenya, who said that she would rise together with our hero. When they entered, Hao Han noticed bodies that were clearly not living people and stated that something was definitely wrong here. Right after that, as if from where the captain of the second squad appeared, he said with a smile that he had been waiting for our hero for a long time. Hao Han couldn't believe it with his own eyes. He loudly asked who was standing in front of him, because this guy should have been killed a long time ago. The captain of the second squad laughed loudly and declared that he was now immortal and could not be killed. Hao Han rushed to the attack and declared that in this case he would not kill him, but would simply arrest him and put him behind bars. But the captain of the second squad immediately created a barrier. Hao Han put aside the thought that it might be dangerous and decided to break through using brute force. However, he failed, and as soon as he touched the barrier, he found himself in an unknown place. Hao Han took his phone and asked the developer what was going on, to which the developer replied that this was a high-class item, illusion magic. Whoever was trapped inside would be trapped in an illusion. They would be trapped until the item was destroyed from the outside. Hao Han asked, "Is there really no way out of here at all?" To which the developer replied that for others, such a situation is hopeless. But for our hero, there is a glimmer of hope, because the time has come to remove the first seal from Zhenya. Hao Han asked how they should remove the seal, and the confused system showed him a picture. Hao Han looked at this with a rather strange face when I try to comprehend what is happening here. The system asked our hero not to waste time, and to choose any of these posts and go ahead. Hao Han threw the developer on the floor and asked what would happen if they put on tadpoles. Unexpectedly, the developer stated that game characters, like people, have a safe period in their menstrual cycle. Hao Han picked up the phone and asked him in an embarrassed voice if this meant that at this time he could have fun to the fullest and not think about the consequences. The developer said that our city could be sure that his creation was absolutely safe during this period. He also added that they have a hidden bonus. Every time they have intercourse, their power increases by 1 level, but illusions of this kind are easily dispelled. And after the connection between them, spiritual bonds can form that will allow our hero to double his power. Hearing all this, Hao Han approached Zhenya and said that they had only one thing left to do. The girl blushed a little and said that she wanted it herself. Hao Han immediately tore off all her clothes in one movement, and they retired to a quiet place. Here and now, our hero's dream has finally come true. When Hao Han finished his work, Zhenya began to glow with blue light. Zhenya's body has changed. The developers announced that she has entered her second form. The captain of the second detachment thought that he would like to see the face of our hero now, deprived of his last hope. As a friend, the artifact with which he imprisoned our hero suddenly exploded right in front of his nose. A few seconds later, the man saw our hero and Zhenya in the second form in front of him. Hao Han said with a smile that it seemed that not only the captain of the second squad was unkillable here. Hao Han added with a smile, "Now his life is worth it too. It's worth a lot." The captain of the second squad activated his abilities and declared that he would then personally escort our hero on his final journey. After that, he immediately rushed to attack. However, Hao Han managed to use the Azure Dragon's defense. But at the very last moment, a developer appeared who said that these twin blades can damage any armor. Therefore, it is necessary to retreat. The developer also added that he can turn Zhenya into any weapon. Hao Han summoned her and declared that it was time to use the spiritual bonds, after which he easily destroyed the artifact of the captain of the second squad. Hao Han held his companion and said that this blade was simply excellent. The captain of the second squad started to run away, asking where this brat got so many things from. However, it was too late. Hao Han easily knocked him down and jumped up, after which he plunged his blade into the guy's back. Hao Han said, with anger in his eyes, that he would not let him escape this time, and he would not kill him either. After that, he asked how he managed to resurrect that time. The man used a hidden bomb and said that Hao Han could ask about it in the next life. After some time, the fairy burst into the building, looking for our hero in the midst of the rubble. Finally, the guys were found, and Hao Han immediately asked to take this girl to the hospital. She was taken to intensive care, and the fairy took our hero and asked how they were able to survive after such a powerful explosion. Hao Han answered that it was all thanks to Zhenya, who saved him at the very last moment. And indeed, at the very last moment, she turned into a protective umbrella in order to save our hero. After that, she returned to her first form and said that she was very glad that the gentleman was okay. The fairy stayed here and thought about the terrifying scale of the explosion, which meant that these people were definitely crazy. Hao Han stated that it was the captain of the second squad and he did not die. The girl asked how he was able to survive, to which Hao Han replied that he wanted to take him alive, but he escaped using the trick of fake death, and he has probably already taken possession of the president's secret program. Hao Han started running and asked to move faster to check how everything was there. When they got to the right room, they opened it and saw the secretary lying in the middle of the room. Hao Han immediately pulled the gag out of her mouth and she declared that this bastard had stolen the young lady's program. The fairy looked at them and asked where the guild members were. How did the enemy manage to invade so easily? The secretary said sadly that these greedy pigs had crossed over to the other side for the sake of big money. Meanwhile, the captain of the second squad was alive again. He thought angrily that it was too painful and he would definitely not screw up again. After that, they called him. The man picked up the phone and asked him where he was. Well, now, for some time, he met with the governor's son, who was clearly unhappy with what had just happened. And the captain of the second squad asked him to stop talking nonsense and asked where the flash drive he asked to bring was. However, the governor's son said that the captain who had built the detachment was simply a madman and that he could not be allowed to cause more problems. After that, he added that the people he forced to release were ideal for communicating with a guy as crazy as himself. The man looked at them and asked, "Does he really think these weaklings can handle him?" And immediately after this, the governor's son announced that whoever kills the captain of the second detachment will receive a reward of 3 million. But the guy immediately used his abilities and killed almost everyone with one blow. Meanwhile, Hao-Han told the president that her program had been stolen. She simply couldn't believe it. Hao-Han stated that unfortunately, if they retell the time of the next invasion and the places with resources, this world is in danger, so they must remotely stop the program. To which the president replied that the program is isolated from the internet, so that it cannot be stopped just for such a case. The fairy thought about it and asked if they could create a new set of programs closed, and then they could also find out the time and location and maybe even catch them all at once. The president thought about it and said that if they had the original data, they could have remade it. But these guys destroyed its storage, and collecting new information could take several months. The hero said that she didn't need to collect information, and she just had to ask this guy everything she needed. The president looked at the phone in surprise and asked what it was. But the hero announced that it was created to explain, but if we speak briefly, it is a self-developing artificial intelligence. The developer of this game, the developer stated that everything is correct, and he is the very genius that they constantly talk about. The president couldn't believe that the developer of this game was actually an artificial intelligence. Hao-Han looked at his phone and asked if he could provide her with all the information she needed, and the developer said that of course he could. But he added that for this to happen, Hao-Han had to do something with the girls in this room. The captain of the second squad, meanwhile, dealt with almost all the opponents. He looked at his status window and said that he didn't know that it turns out you can level up just by killing weaklings. However, he decided that he had seen enough for today and was already tired. After which he looked at the rest and asked if anyone wanted to join him. Almost everyone who stood here immediately knelt down. The captain of the second squad thought for a moment and said that with so many people, money could become a problem. After that, he looked at the governor's son and said that this boy was quite rich. The guy, with tears in his eyes, began to talk about how his family's financial situation was actually quite average. The man put the blade to his neck and ordered him to call his father to give him 300 million. The boy was too scared and started to run away, only after which the captain of the second squad ordered his men to attack and capture him alive. The captain of the second squad thought that with money, people, and most importantly, he would simply rule this world, and Hao-Han could prepare for his death. Open, meanwhile, was resting and had just gotten out of the shower. When he came out, two girls were already waiting for him on the bed. Hao-Han walked up to them and looked at the president and said that if she changed her mind, it was not too late to say so. However, the girl immediately undressed and declared that this was the only way to restore what she had lost. She walked past our hero and stated that she wanted to take a shower first. Hao-Han agreed with an embarrassed voice. The developer immediately appeared and said that this was the first time the three of them were fighting, and the data would be critically important, so Hao-Han should try and do well. Hao-Han stated that the developer is simply perverted. However, the developer has already added that they can do this at their own will. It is doomed to collect data on heart rate, hormones, and much more using electronic devices on the body. Judging by various data, these two girls have long been secretly in love with our hero. Hao-Han was there and said that he didn't expect less from the developer. And the developer said with a smile that he wasn't forcing anyone. She just helps to understand human desires. Suddenly, the fairy said that she was going to sleep. And if the developer doesn't stop making this obscene noise, she will simply break it. The developer stated that your hero doesn't have to worry because her estrogen is growing and she's just being stubborn. Unexpectedly, the president hugged our hero from behind. She said that she wanted to accept our hero not only because of his experience, but because of his calmness and confidence, because when she looks at him, she sees a strong man. After all, almost everyone treats her with excessive respect, and their eyes are full of desire. And only Hao-Han can ignore her beauty and remain himself in front of her. Hao-Han looked at her and said that he hadn't ignored anyone, but he was just having a hard time getting it. But while he was saying this, the girl interrupted him and kissed him passionately. They immediately jumped onto the bed, But the fairy was still unhappy with what was happening. The developer was absolutely delighted, because what he wanted so much was happening in front of him. Time for a flashback. Ever since the fairy entered the police academy, she has been in the spotlight constantly. And of course there were guys there that she liked. However, she couldn't let some weakling take possession of her. Later, she entered the secret bureau with the highest score, and even fewer people dared to approach her. The only exception was the handsome man with evil intentions, the captain of the second squad. When she first met our hero, you thought he was just an ordinary loser. However, his actions made her believe that Hao Han was her true soulmate. But now, her soulmate is in bed with another woman. And for the fairy, it was too strange. Hao Han touched the fairy's side and asked her to help him a little. The girl immediately stood up and declared that our hero has neither shame nor conscience. But a second later, she immediately undressed and declared that she was ready. The president breathed a sigh of relief, because now she could finally rest. When it was all over, Hao Han approached the developer and asked if he was satisfied. However, the developer did not respond, tried to understand what was happening, and was already scared because he thought that the system did not see it. The developer said it was fine, there was just too much data. After some time, the developer announced that he had evolved and his avatar had appeared. Hao Han looked at this and asked, "Was the developer really a woman all this time?" The developer asked them to shut up and stated that the data had been sent and they could now start creating the program. The president immediately opened her laptop and began to work diligently. Hao Han walked to the window and declared that it was too late. The third invasion had already begun. We need to find a place rich in resources as soon as possible and finally catch this villain.